or Twitter or YouTube, and I just realized that I had the live stream muted, so I just fixed that. So you can comment on there as well. I do want to begin with the Brewers. I want to begin with last night with an observation or with a take that's so obvious. I'm mad that it took me even 5 minutes to come up with this last night. I'm mad that it took me the 5 minutes that it did to realize what was happening in that game and to get a beat on it, because what happened to Jacob Misiorowski last night in the first inning, and then what he followed up that first inning with in the second, the third, and the fourth, it was so predictable. It was so obvious. I'm mad that it took me even 5 minutes to figure it out and to see it coming. So I did not foresee the Brewers coming back and winning after falling behind 3-0 in the first inning. I would have bet against that. Most gamblers would. It's just unlikely if you're down 3 runs that you're going to come back. Even if you're a good team with a good offense, the odds would say, and I don't know what the live odds were in that moment when they were down by 3 runs, but you would have bet on the Cubs winning that game, right? I wouldn't have predicted, or I wouldn't have bet on the Brewers coming back and winning, but I would have bet every dollar in my savings account that Jacob Misiorowski would do what he did, and that his teammates and especially his manager would react and comment on what he did in the way that they did. Okay, let me explain. Watching the first inning last night and watching the Cubs take that 3-0 lead, and then watching finally Misiorowski strike out Horner after a long battle and get out of that inning around 40 pitches. It was during the commercial break, the middle of the first. I'm sitting there, and I said, oh my God, I know exactly what's about to happen. This feels so reminiscent. This feels so familiar from what happened to Quinn Priester back in early May. Remember that game when he got shelled early on? How many runs did he give up in the first inning? The Cubs scored 2 in the first and 7 in the second. So the Brewers were down 9-0, 2 innings in. And then Quinn Priester was still able to continue the game. He threw another 2 or 2 and change, and really, remember, saved the bullpen in a game where they really need it, right? We needed Quinn Priester to get some length. And remember, after that game, Pat Murphy sang the praises of Quinn Priester, even though his final line in that game was 4 1/3, 6 hits, 7 earned runs, 4 walks. It was all over the place. Threw 101 pitches in 4 1/3, by the way. But Pat Murphy's response, remember, to this Quinn Priester outing all the way back in May was this, and I went back and I pulled the audio.
We had this happen to us before, right? When you have that many starting pitchers down, what would other teams do? When you have Savali, Cortez, Woodruff, Ashby, DL Hall, you have all those guys down, you're going to run into some games that happen to be tonight where you've got to kind of pitch guys that aren't quite ready for that situation. You can say Priester was awful if you want to, but there's some signs that you can see why we signed him. There's some signs there that show the kid's got really good stuff. He's a great competitor, because to come back after that inning that he had, go back on the TV and look at some of the calls. They're very close.
So Pat Murphy singing the praises of Quinn Priester immediately following an outing where Priester got shelled. I mean, he got torched. And this was shortly after he arrived in Milwaukee in early May. Remember this? I'll never forget it. I'll never forget. Well, Priester got shelled, but he bounced back and he gave us some much needed length. That meant a lot to Murphy. And it kind of seemed like it was almost parody, but there is some truth to what Murphy said there. And in the middle of the first inning, I was sitting there waiting for the Brewers to get their ups in the bottom of the first. And I said, here's what's going to happen. Misiorowski is going to come back out for the second and the third and probably the fourth, because I think after throwing 40 pitches in the first, really the best you could hope for was 4 innings from Miz at that point. I said, he's going to come back out for the second and the third and the fourth and be unbelievable. And the Brewers are probably going to lose because they're down 3-0. And Murphy will sing the praises of Miz in a way that he hasn't in the past. Murphy's been publicly, not hard on Misiorowski, but he is not, gone goo goo gaga fanboy just because Miz throws 103, right? We've heard Murphy talk about, this kid, he can throw hard. He can throw, but can he pitch? Right? Those types of comments, right? Like Murphy, very skeptical. This guy's got a lot to learn in this league. Just because he can throw 101, that doesn't mean anything. This is the Brewers. It's not the Misiorowski show. This is the Brewers show, right? All of these comments that Murph has made, not picking on Miz or not being skeptical of Miz, but just not going overboard with praise like many others have. And I knew this was going to happen. I would have bet every dollar in my bank account that Misiorowski was going to come back out in the second, the third, and the fourth and be awesome. And the Brewers would probably lose because they were down a couple runs. And then after the game, Murphy would be as complimentary of Jacob Misiorowski as he has been at any point through his major league career. And that's exactly what happened. Now, secondarily, or maybe not secondarily, the Brewers also scored a bunch of runs and they came back to win. But I would have bet every dollar in my bank account. And here's Pat Murphy after the game, basically saying the exact thing I would have bet on him saying again. After Miz gave up those 3 runs, I'm like, I know exactly how this is going to go. He's going to come out. He's going to eat the next couple innings, be awesome. And Murph is going to sing his praises despite the fact that the first inning was an absolute catastrophe. And here's Pat Murphy.
First inning, we're down 3-0. He feels horrible. His adrenaline. I mean, it's like a fighter getting knocked down in the first round, and he's got to recoup. And that he did. And he started pitching. The pitching coaches did a great job prepping him. You got to use all 4. This is how you got to pitch. He said at that point, I'm exhausted, and he still gave us 4 and he wanted to go out for the 5th. So I learned a lot about him, and it just goes to show you the kid can pitch, not just throw.
There you go. And that's the most complimentary that Pat Murphy has been of Jacob Misiorowski since he's arrived as a big leaguer with the Brewers. And those games, by the way, Jacob Misiorowski shutting out the Dodgers in one of those appearances. Against the Twins, did he take a no-hitter into the 6th or did he take it into the 7th? Misiorowski's had some unbelievable games. And Pat Murphy, for the most part, has kind of been unmoved in a lot of his post-game pressers. And I would have, again, bet every dollar in my bank account after that first inning that was what was going to happen with Miz, and that was going to be Murphy's reaction. Now, a nice bonus, the Brewers scored a bunch of runs, and they also won on top of it, and it wasn't just Murphy after the game. Here's Christian Yelich talking about Misiorowski.
It shows you a lot about what he's made of out there when it's kind of hitting the fan on him. It can get away from you. He gave up 3 runs, probably felt like he should have gave up none. He throws one to the backstop and then throws one away. You can get down on yourself big right there, and you reach back for 101. And I knew we were going to be all right when he did that right after all that kind of happened. And that was awesome, dude. Come back in, settle down, and go back out there and put up 3 more scoreless innings. That's what it's about. It's how it's going to be sometimes in the big leagues. It's never going to be smooth sailing and it'll be messy sometimes, but you got to reach back and compete when that kind of stuff's happening. And I'd love to see it from him. And I told him that's why it was my favorite start of his.
So Yelich saying that was my favorite start of his career so far. That ending one more time.
I told him that's why it was my favorite start of his.
And then Pat Murphy at the end of his, what was his final comment?
Kid can pitch, not just throw.
He can pitch. He can't just throw. Yelich saying it was my favorite outing of his of the year. Here's Trevor McGill after the game. This is courtesy of Kurt Hope.
Mature pitching, right? Throw 3 up in the first inning and, make an error yourself and then pick yourself back up and get the next 10 people out. That's huge, right? Just kind of shows the development and the mentality that kid has.
And lastly, why not Sal Frelick? What did you have to say about this?
It's awesome. I think the real first time he's faced a little adversity, and it was great to see him bounce back. And obviously that stuff's going to happen, right? It's baseball, so there was no panic, which was awesome. No panic from him, no panic from any of the coaches, any of the players. So we knew we were still in that one, and really happy to pull off the comeback there.
Now, I don't bet on sports. It's illegal in Wisconsin, so it would be a lot of work. Whoa, I find ways. I have a guy. Okay, well, you have a guy. I don't want to get a guy. I don't want to get an offshore. I'm going to drive down to Pato, and I'm not going to do that either. I also don't have any money to gamble on sports. So there's plenty of reasons I don't gamble. If there would have been on the FanDuel app or the DraftKings app, let's just live in fantasy world where that's legal in Wisconsin, and I could have tapped into DraftKings and bet yes on Misiorowski will have an awesome 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and the manager will praise him in a way that he hasn't before, and his teammates will praise him. I knew that was exactly what was going to happen. I didn't know the Brewers were going to score a bunch of runs and come back to win. I think it worked out because Matthew Boyd has been so good for so long. His scoreless inning streak was something like 24, 25 innings, so he was probably due to come back down to earth. He didn't have command. The Brewers should have scored more runs than they did and allowed fewer than they did last night. Like, the Cubs were lucky to get those couple of runs in the first inning, but then again, I don't even want to say lucky. They forced the Brewers to make some plays, and Misiorowski couldn't do it. They put the ball in play, and they lived with the result, which is a big reason why the Brewers have been successful this year. So I don't even want to say it's lucky, but if you play that exact game 10 times in more outcomes than fewer outcomes, the Brewers are going to score more than they did last night, and the Cubs are going to score less, right? So a very impressive performance. I wouldn't have bet on the outcome. I don't bet, but just in a fantasy world, if I would have been able to put every dollar in my bank account on the outcome of Misiorowski coming out and shoving in the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, retiring the last 10 hitters he faced, and then Pat Murphy completely effusive in praise of the postgame, I would have bet every dollar in my bank account on that, and that's exactly what happened. And Brewers fans, you should have seen it coming too, because we have enough evidence this year of how this Brewers pitching staff operates and how Murphy reacts to this pitching staff, what he likes, what moves him, and what for the most part leaves him completely unmoved. Yeah, take a no-hitter into the 7th, whatever. Fight back after an inning of adversity to eat some innings for this bullpen. Oh yeah. Murphy will praise that. The only thing that he'd like more is if Mizrowski could also hit and then take some walks, because home runs that's nice. Can you get on base? Can you swing at the right pitches? Can you work the count? And can you pass the bat to the next guy? That's what gets Pat Murphy going. That's what fires him up. Let's break a little early here because I want to get to your Brewers phone calls on the other side. We'll have a nice 10 minutes before we get to Nick Osen at the bottom of the hour at 4:35. So we'll break now. 608-321-1670. I want your Brewers thoughts next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
That's what it's about. It's how it's going to be sometimes in the big leagues. It's never going to be smooth sailing and it'll be messy sometimes, but you got to reach back and compete when that kind of stuff's happening. And I'd love to see it from him. And I told him that's why it was my favorite start is.
A lot of praise from his teammates, praise from his manager, which is not easy to get. Like, Pat Murphy was not that moved about Mizrowski once upon a time taking a no-hitter into the 7th against the Twins or whatever it was, or his performance against the Dodgers, right? Like, that's the kind of start that gets Murphy going. You flub some things in the first, you fall behind, and then you bounce back and you continue to eat innings and do the things that you need to do for the team. Not just for the glory and for the stats and for the success of your start, but the success of the team. I saw it coming a mile away. The only thing that makes me mad is that it took me 2 or 3 minutes to draw that conclusion after the top of the first inning. Of course, that's how it was going to go. Now, I didn't think the Brewers would come back and win. That was a nice side benefit. The fact that their offense put it together and Isaac Collins with another timely hit and some home runs. God, aren't those fun? And the Andrew Vaughn, it's just objectively hilarious that he's doing this. It's just really funny. Sometimes sports are just funny and you just got to laugh. 608-321-1670. Nick Osen in 15 minutes, but plenty of time for your Brewers phone calls. In the meantime, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
It's your gambling degenerate friend here in New Jersey, Grant.
Hey, Big Ron. I was talking gambling a little bit. I wish there was a bet that I could place, a very specific situational bet for that outcome last night, for Miz to bounce back and then for Murphy to glaze him in the postgame press conference. That was so obvious. You could see it coming a mile away.
Obviously, you're not going to be able to place a post-game conference bet, but you probably could have gotten creative. And
you think one day I feel like we might get there if we're betting, first pitch ball strike. It feels like these bets are getting more and more specific, Big Ron.
Oh yeah, you can bet every pitch.
Yeah.
You can do it on your cell phone here in New Jersey, and it's
which I wouldn't be able to make money on. I could make money at betting press conferences. I listen to these things. I tell you, I if there was a way to bet press conferences, I could make money on that. I could just do that for a full-time job.
Well, it's funny you said you're not interested in getting a bookie or going on an illegal offshore account, but there is a legal way to at least bet futures in Wisconsin. It's the Robinhood platform, which is a brokerage firm for stocks, and they figured out how to take sport. They're expanding into sports betting, and it's 100% legal. Although they haven't figured out how to do single game yet, but like for futures, like if you want to like predict who's gonna win the division, the central division, or like a golf we recently had a golf major, for a golf tournament, they'll take futures and you can pick who wants to win the golf tournament. So, and it's totally legal. So I'd encourage some of your,
and I know we want to talk Brewers. I'm a little exhausted by things being illegal and then businesses finding a way to work around that illegal thing. Like marijuana, for example, is not legal to purchase in Wisconsin. Okay. But then, why does every smoke shop have some, differently bred version of, we can basically buy weed. If it's going to be illegal, I don't know, what are we doing? It's just dumb. So, Robinhood is a workaround. You can just buy this Delta 9 stuff or whatever. Why are we wasting our time with workarounds? Just legalize it if that's what we're going to do.
So, a couple observations from the Brewers game, okay? First of all, Boyd is their ace. We stared down their best pitcher. They only have 2 pitchers, Boyd and Imanaga, that have sub-4 ERAs. Their starting pitching is only 2 deep, whereas ours is 10 deep.
Yeah.
We have far superior, starting pitcher to them, and I really think that's going to win the division for us, and it's going to fare well for us in the playoffs. And for them to send their ace down there last night and him to give up 5 runs, 5 earnings, and 5 innings, I'm very, very happy in comeback fashion. The other observation, my second and final one, is that, it's funny, all the Cubs fans on Twitter X have been, their big slogan right now, they seem to it's just mass groupthink, is that the Brewers are just lucky.
Yeah.
They're just lucky.
Yep.
And that's how they scored their 3 runs. They had 2 walks, they had an infield hit, they had a wild pitch and an error. It was all luck.
And that's why, and Big Ron, I caught myself in the first segment. That's a great call. Thank you. That's why in the first segment, I stopped myself when I said, well, the Cubs were lucky to score the 3 runs that they did. And on some level, I believe that, but I'm also honest enough to be able to call a spade when the Brewers sometimes score a run. I'm able to say, a little lucky there. But you need to set yourself up for that luck, right? Constantly having guys on base or constantly putting the ball in play is going to force the other team to deal with that. And the Cubs did a good job of that. Some long at-bats. Nico Horner's at bat. Battling pitches. If Nico Horner reaches, Miz is probably out in the first inning. And last night's game, at least from a pitching perspective, looks a lot differently. The Brewers bullpen is asked to cover, 8 innings or 7 innings instead of whatever they ended up covering, 5, because Miz pitched 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 5 innings. So I don't want to say that the Cubs were lucky. The Cubs in that first inning did a very good job of doing what the Brewers do. Put the ball in play and make the opponent field. Make a throw to first, right? Do the things that are necessary to get through an inning. And the Brewers, at least in that first inning, weren't able to do it. And, I think the Brewers getting a taste of their own medicine a little bit. I hesitate to say it's lucky. It is lucky, but then you have to say that the Brewers are occasionally lucky as well. But the Brewers set themselves up for that. The Cubs in that first inning did much of the same. Saw a lot of pitches, were very patient. So lucky, whatever. My favorite is when people say on the internet that the Brewers play an unethical brand of baseball. I get a kick. I think that's funny. I think the Brewers should lean into that. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
It's Louie in Eau Claire.
Hey, what's going on, Louie?
Hey, Grant. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I'm old enough to remember that quaint time some 6 weeks ago when people were saying that Abner Uribe instead of Trevor McGill should be the closer of the team. Do you remember that, Grant?
I remember people saying that. I believe I pushed back on that at the time. I kicked it around as a topic, but I believe I pushed back on that idea. But people were saying that, yes.
I do remember you saying that they should stay with McGill, and I remember talking about it. And I guess that leads me to my point is that, I think the consensus is that the Brewers need a corner infield bat or, power bat as much as anything. Or I would contend that Uribe hasn't been bad. McGill's been great. But overall, I would say that McGill and maybe DL Hall are maybe the only relievers that are trending upwards. And the other ones are either flat or slightly declining. And I don't feel great about that going forward. What do you think?
Well, I mean, part of that is workload too, Louie. That's a great call. And I wouldn't be lying, or I would be lying, Louie, if I told you that I felt awesome about Jared Koenig and Grant Anderson, right? Because Miz only goes 4, you maybe have to use 1 or 2 arms more than you would have liked. Yoho, I mean, Pat Murphy was verbally, obviously, clearly yelling swear words walking to the mound to get Yoho last night. Like it wasn't a perfect game from the bullpen, but they did their job. I feel great about McGill. He's been awesome. He's been excellent. And sneaky underrated part of McGill, like you watching these days, longer hair, that like he's got a little bit of aura. He's grown into that closer role very nicely. Uribe, about a month and a half ago, I thought was throwing as well as any reliever has thrown for the Brewers this year. Now he's gotten a lot of innings, as has Nick Mears, which is what worries me. One thing that I scratch my head at some point they were going to have to lean on Grant Anderson or Koenig or Yoho, and you wouldn't feel great, but when a starter only goes 4, right, you need to use some arms that maybe you don't feel perfect about. What I don't get is DL Hall only going 1 inning. His whole thing is like a swingman between a starter and a reliever. I'm not saying he's got to throw 4 innings out of relief, but it's happened more than once now in the last week where it's like, that's all you're going to ask from DL Hall? He's out there to eat innings and to bridge a short start with the leverage end of the pen. I don't know. And maybe Murph was asked about it. I didn't watch the press conference in its entirety. And again, the FanDuel channel doesn't post those anymore. I could pick through the audio file that Mike Clemens sent. I don't know if anyone asked him about that. Get a little more length from DL Hall. That was really my one qualm with the bullpen last night. The starter went 4 innings. So all the people on Brewers Tour, it's like, why is Grant Anderson out? Well, someone's got to be out there. And if Nick Mears is out there, people are like, oh, Nick Mears again. Like, at some point, you have to use relievers that you aren't perfectly comfortable with. I just feel like you could have used 1 fewer had you run DL Hall out there for a second inning, which I thought was supposed to be his role. I thought that's his profile as a pitcher. 608-321-1670. One more Brewer call, and then we're going to break for Nick Osen. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, L. Gunderson.
Hey, L. Gunderson. All right. What's going on?
LG from Wanakee. How's that?
Oh, awesome. Oh, I love that. I don't think we have a routine Wanakee caller. Excellent. I'm glad you've grabbed the space, LG.
I am a listener. 4:00 weekdays is listen to Grant if I possibly can. So
I appreciate that.
Before I talk about the Brewers, I just want to say thanks for having a sports talk show. I know you talk to your buddies sometimes about Survivor and that stuff.
A little. But mix it in when it's not. LG, here's the thing. On a Monday after a Packer game or when something huge has happened with the Brewers, I feel like we do have a sense as a show of when to tighten it down a little bit. We do get a little fast and loose sometimes, but I feel like for the most part we do okay.
Well, I appreciate you don't yell at me. You give me takes that either I agree with or I got to think about them.
Sure.
And so, great show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My question on the Brewers is, where has Jared Koenig discovered the 100-mile-an-hour fastball?
He can tune it up. The thing about Koenig is he's great against lefties. He's really not. He's not even good against righties. He's almost like bad against righties. So they have to figure that out. And the frustrating thing is, LG, when they bring Koenig in to specifically get lefties and he can't get those lefties and then he's got to face righties, like he's useless then. You know what I mean? Yeah. But they found a way to up his velocity, which I think has been a big part of his I don't know that he's flourished this year, but he's been able to get through some rough stretches because of that.
Yeah, I think that's partly your answer on DL Hall last night. Murphy was really playing the matchups, and he was kind of using everybody. And so I think that's part of the answer on DL is that Murph didn't want him going up against right-handed batters.
Yeah, and I get that. It's just sometimes you can really overcomplicate it. LG, I just got to run because we got to get to Nick Osen. I appreciate it. Call back. At some point, you were going to have to throw a reliever last night in a spot where you didn't feel great about it. Do you want DL Hall in a less than ideal matchup, or do you want Grant Anderson, who's actually like I'm kind of a Grant Anderson defender because I think he's kind of nice with it. But I just of all of the tweaks or the little adjustments that maybe could have made last night a little bit easier, at some point DL Hall needs to throw more than an inning. That's why he's there. Same with Aaron Ashby, but Aaron Ashby's been kind of wobbly, and he just can't field his position now. So him and Mizorowski can work on that together. You do some PFPs, on an off day or during batting practice or something. Nick Osen's going to join us next, 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, live from Platteville. He's down there watching Badger practice. The coaches and coordinators have all spoken this week, so we have a lot to pick through. He will join us next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Really great for our guys to understand. And so a part of that is embracing being an underdog, or in some ways, outplaying what people even think you are. And that's how Wisconsin's gotten to where they are, and sometimes you need to be humble.
Luke Fickell talking last week, Big Ten Media Days out in Las Vegas, about Wisconsin needing to embrace an underdog mentality, which you could interpret two ways. You could say, good, I want my program to be, piss and vinegar and fighting for every inch and yard. And yeah. Or you could look at it more cynically and say, well, yeah, they have to embrace being an underdog because this program has slipped a little bit. And now with this brutal schedule this year, they are quite literally going to be an underdog in a lot of the games that they're playing. So it depends on how you interpret those comments. We go to Nick Osen, 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, to help interpret those comments. And for the latest from Platteville, how has Platteville been, my friend? I'm jealous that you get to be over there this week.
Grant, it's great to be back, man. I love Platteville. I'm always excited when we get to go back there for fall camp. I think it gets a little bit underrated. It's a nice kind of college campus. Good coffee shop. There's some good food spots. It's been great, man. Day one, like you said, I think there are a couple of different ways to kind of go about that and just kind of that underdog mentality. I have really felt that this group is just a little bit more serious, all business, culture first, forward, and they know that they have to shut some things up or shut some things out this year because, as we know, last year is not what we are used to around Wisconsin.
Well, my first question to you, and you kind of hinted at an answer there, but I want to talk more about that. Setting the offense to the side, because I know there's changes there, a new OC and a new formula really on offense. What are some of the differences? What can you give Badgers fans who are looking sideways at this team saying, well, I don't know if I'm hopeful for this year. The last 2 years have let me down and the schedule's brutal. What would you tell people to say, well, there's some things that feel different, some things to maybe be hopeful about, aside from the actual football changes?
Yeah, Grant, I think that's an awesome question. So something that I have felt, and, obviously part of my job is speaking with recruits. So they're an outside person that, they wouldn't say things just to say them, right? I've been hearing that they feel the culture's in a really good spot. I've heard that about, different places in the program. And then today, when we speak with like these players yesterday and Coach Fickell today, I think it is very evident. You'll love this quote. I talked with Jake Renfro last week, and he basically said, I don't want this to sound bad, guys, but some of the bad pieces or the people that didn't believe are out now, So I think there is truly a unified vision and direction. I think that's number one. And two, without getting too deep into the football, like you said, I think there are simply better players at this point too. I think the roster, there were a lot of guys that you couldn't trust yet in game action. And now I'm at the point where I would trust 70, 80% of the roster to play this Saturday if they had to.
So you think, just speaking of different players, bigger, more physical, harder to move? Because I know that was an emphasis, or it would seem it would be an emphasis of Luke Fickell, because he talked about, we got to play grown-ass man football. And probably as a response to getting pushed around by some of your rivals like Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, like that has to change. That starts up front. Do they seem bigger, stronger, tougher, maybe more that type of player that they've been looking for this offseason?
Yeah, Grant, I think bigger is exceptionally correct on terms of the defensive line. I think that is really, really important. That's been a spot that the group wasn't where it needed to be, especially in kind of stopping the run and certainly getting the pass rush. But this last year, I think that was an area that the staff hit really, really hard. You look at who they got in the transfer portal, 5, 6, 7 guys at some of those positions. So that was huge. I think strength. Now, guys have come along, but I think just game ready guys, upperclassmen that you can plug and play, I think have been very important. And then on the offensive line, that unit was actually solid by a lot of measurements last year. But I think just being around the program and some of the guys, whether you catch them in interviews or just speaking with them throughout the last year, there is an excitement, Grant, about getting a little bit more back to kind of the smash mouth football a little bit, not just kind of the rhythm and timing and things that we saw in some of Phil Longo's offense. This is a lot more pro style, translatable. I think it'll be really, really exciting for that group in the trenches.
So I want to ask you about Jeff Grimes, and we can talk about that for a couple minutes. But first, you're talking about players that you could trust to play a game on Saturday if you needed. Fickle's brought in good recruiting classes, right? The composite rankings or whatever, and you guys do this at 24/7, right? It came out, very positively for the program, let's say. This offseason, it seems like maybe there's a little bit less of young, highly touted recruits, and it's more of, okay, this guy came from South Dakota or this guy came from a lesser program, but it's a guy who's played 4 years already and is an adult, right? So talk about the difference of a player like that versus someone who's 19 but has 4 stars next to his name if you look him up on your website or on the Badgers website.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think, like I said, there's been a focus within this culture. It's not about kind of the guys themselves. It is simply about the buy-in. I was just writing up the quotes actually from Fickle today. There's been a realization that, look, we have to wipe last year behind us. Basically, there is a challenge ahead. You don't have to look too hard or too closely, right? Granted, that schedule or the Big Ten or kind of just some of these opportunities. And so I think he wanted guys, of course, good football players, that is obvious, but guys that can buy in, whether they are plug and play starting or whether, hey, you're going to be competing for this spot or maybe even a little bit further, but you're a part of a Big Ten program. I think that's all been really important. And I just feel like it's been guys that you can really trust while still looking at, production at some places. I think of the recent wideout DeKel Crowdis or tight end Lance Mason. Like you said, good production, but maybe not as highly touted at some of those places.
Well, and it, as I was asking that question and listening to your answer, I think a little bit of the basketball program and what they've done too. You want to recruit talented players that fit your program and have them in the system coming up, but then you supplement the roster with John Tonje, who's played 1 million games, even though I don't remember what he was ranked as a transfer last offseason, but it wasn't high, or Nick Boyd, where it's like, this guy he wasn't a McDonald's All-American at any point, but he's played a ton of basketball and can come in here and be an adult. And I guess that's got to be my hope for some of the transfer players they brought in. Like, who did they bring in to replace the tackle who went down with injury? Like, that's probably an example of what we're talking about, right?
That's a great example, Grant. Actually, a Wisconsin native, so you assume some of that buy-in, the culture with the Badgers. Davis Heinzen from Central Michigan has played a lot of football, maybe not all of the accolades, but I think that's a great comparison. He's someone that is competing at left tackle right now. You bet.
Nick Osen, 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports. Tell us what you're seeing and hearing around Jeff Grimes and maybe the excitement that certain players have to be playing his brand of football this year.
So I can say quite confidently, this is a reason for a lot of excitement around the program. I have kind of been pitching this since maybe January or so, just because, there might have been larger names out there that could have been hired. But you look at kind of the blend of potential Wisconsin football, getting back to the run game, somebody that has seen success in multiple spots. And, just if you speak with him in an interview, whether you're a player, media around him, a coach, like you get the sense he can relate to a lot of people. He's been around the game a lot. And so with him, I think that there's a natural trust. I think that there's a realization that this has to be a better year for a lot of people. And I think he's someone that didn't shy away from that challenge. And in terms of football-wise, Grant, I'm watching these offenses. I'm writing about it a little bit. Like everybody has the chance to get some targets, to get some touches, whether you're talking about tight end, fullback, 2 or 3 running backs, wideouts, deep shots. Like it's really, really intriguing. And I've been impressed. I think I liked the hire. And every time I've heard him speak or been around him at some of the prospect camps, I feel even better for Wisconsin's offensive side.
What do you think the biggest reason was that Phil Longo's offense never worked? Was it they didn't have the right players? Was it him as a teacher or as a communicator? It didn't click. Was the fit with Luke Fickell just not good? And that's why what do you think was the biggest reason it didn't work? And maybe how could they avoid that this time around?
Yeah, I do think to run an offense like Longo had, at times you need specific types of personnel, but more than anything, Grant, and Longo was great to deal with interviews and things like that. I do think it's a smart offense for some programs, but I just don't think it was a great fit, if that makes sense. Whether that is simply with Coach Fickle or some of maybe the teaching procedures, like you said, or just the entire coaching staff. I think that this group is a little bit more coalesced and cohesive together than maybe it was before. And that's okay. Sometimes that happens. Longo ended up somewhere. Fickle got somebody that should be a better fit, and you move on and go forward in this business. But I think there were a lot of questions about it at Wisconsin originally. And then just going forward, it just didn't seem to ever really mesh.
Does Fickle almost have to treat this like it's year one? He can't come out and publicly say that, but would that be the correct approach with a different, size and physicality on defense, a completely new offense? Doesn't he almost have to approach this as a blank slate and basically a new program in his third year?
I think how I'm kind of looking at it, or would describe that, Grant, kind of a half reset. Obviously you're changing a lot. Like, even we didn't even touch on, like, defensively, some of those players coming in. Even the scheme is going to be a little bit different in some of the responsibilities for the guys up front. But at the same time, right, you can't go full year one, because these guys need to win a marquee game or two in terms of getting back to that bowl, as I know we talked about last year. So that's why I think you recognize some of those changes. And I've seen a Coach Fickle, a Luke Fickle, that has been very honest about kind of what hasn't worked and what needs to happen to go forward. I'm literally, kind of writing that up this afternoon. And I think it's really good to see. He's not brushing off what has happened like it doesn't matter. He understands what went wrong and what maybe can go right in terms of some of the culture guys that have come back. I know Vinny Anthony's somebody we really like, both of us, some of the old linemen I've mentioned, but this is still really, really important. And it's going to be huge to start off with just a dominant win, Grant, on that Thursday night game, and not just sneaking by.
Well, and I think, and I talked about this with Jesse last week, and I think I've talked about this with Zach as well. Like, this is the type of offense that should be able to flex its muscles against Miami, Ohio, or Middle Tennessee, or whoever. And the offense the last couple of years, like, I just don't know that it was the type, like, we're going to overpower South Dakota, or we're going to overpower Western Michigan. Even if this team pound for pound isn't much better than the last 2 years, I think this is the type of team that, like, scores some physicality points and feels good about themselves beating up on a lesser opponent, right?
Grant, I think that's phenomenally said. You've got the physicality, which, look, you had some of that in this last offense. It just, that wasn't as important to find success within it. Now, they're going to rely on the trenches, which I know has a lot of people excited. But at the same time, 3rd and 7, let's say you get a chunk gain for a first down, okay? Now you're at 2nd and 2, 3rd and 1. This offense also has the chances to maybe do a little play action and stretch the field too, which you didn't see as much. Kind of the spread that Phil Longo used maybe get some of that sexy appeal outside, but you didn't see a ton of that in Madison. And now I think based on what we saw in the spring, and now, like, I really do think there are those opportunities. And that's why I'm seeing excitement from whether it's Cade Giacomelli, Dylan Jones, Tuck Ashcraft. Everyone seems to be bought in.
30 seconds. What would a win over Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon? It would be their first signature win in what feels like forever. What would that do for this program and the guys in that locker room?
Wow. A really good question. For the program, I think it would put them a step up nationally like we're used to. And for the guys in the program, Grant, just kind of revalidate that things are back going to the right direction, built from within, culture, and just trusting kind of the front on the jersey rather than the back, because the culture wasn't where it should have been, Grant, real quick, that first year and a half. I do believe it is now.
Well, and those guys need to be able to celebrate something together. It's really hard to beat the pulp out of guys and to go to the weight room to do all this stuff when you don't have that moment. What's the game in 20 years that these teammates are going to talk about if they have a reunion and look back at their time at Madison? They haven't really had one of those games in a couple years. So whether that's, going to Outson and winning or beating, it doesn't even matter. Like, you just need one of those games where we're going to talk about it in 10 years and these guys can rally around something like that. So, Nick, appreciate your coverage. Enjoy Platteville. I know we'll talk again probably as the season gets closer, but thank you so much.
I can't wait, Grant. Great speaking with you. Thank you.
Yeah, you as well. Nick Osen, 24/7 Sports. You can follow him on Twitter. He's at CBS Sports, and you can read all of his stories about basketball and football. He does a tremendous job with both. And for Badger basketball fans, we get these, the practice here, a little bit of audio there. Like there's trickles right now. But Nick's on the recruiting trail and a lot of these basketball camps and games where he's speaking with people who, maybe you're headed to Wisconsin, committed to Wisconsin, so you can get your basketball fix as well, which I know if you're like me, goes a long way this time of year. I really enjoy it. Something to look forward to. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back, kind of tie a bow around the first hour, all the Brewers and Badgers things that we've discussed, and then we'll reset things at 5 o'clock.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
And the other thing I didn't like, Matt, is when they got down 4-3 after 3, it didn't feel it felt really done.
Yeah, the whole vibe changed.
Yeah, it just didn't feel
like
trying
to think of an expression, but I didn't want to botch it.
And that's your point about being 23-21 lately. That's what it feels like. A 23-21 team, that feels like a loss. The April and May Cubs, you're down 4-3 in the third, and you talk about this, and air quotes for the audio people, this vaunted Cubs
and who
offense.
says that you're making fun of now?
No,
You've used that a couple times now.
Because everybody just keeps talking about, we don't need
everybody.
Suarez.
Okay.
We don't need Suarez. We don't need another bat. Pitching. This offense isn't good enough right now. They got to get going.
That's the perspective from the Cubs side of things. That's Locked On Cubs last night. Our friend Sam Olber, who was on yesterday, his co-host Matt Cozy. I feel better about the Brewers' chances of winning this division not necessarily because of anything the Brewers are doing, although they're doing lots of great things. I just look to the team down south, to the Cubs, and I'm like, well, is Kyle Tucker going to be elite again this year? Is he going to be the guy he's supposed to be? Is Michael Busch ever going to return to the form we saw earlier? And Michael Busch is like, he's not expected to be, one of their 2 or 3 biggest bats, but he was awesome in the first half, all-star level. And so was Seiya, Suzuki. Those guys have all trailed off. And if there's not another hot streak from Suzuki or Busch, and if Happ's going to be this bad, and if Kyle Tucker isn't going to be a superstar, well, the Cubs don't have the pitching. The Brewers should be able to win this division. And I don't feel confident about that because of anything the Brewers are doing. They continue to do Brewers things. I just don't know that the Cubs are the true wagon that we saw earlier this year. Now watch, I say this, they'll score 12 runs tonight. 608-321-1670. Time for a quick call before we get to Zach's update at 5 o'clock. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
We thought the Brewers were going to be the team coming down to earth. In the second half, we're seeing the Cubs come down to earth.
I mean, the Brewers, it's not like they weren't doing anything that insane. You know what I mean? It's not like Contreras was hitting a home run every night. Like, they were just doing a lot of little things, and I think they can sustain that, and they have the pitching. The Cubs, like, if Kyle Tucker is going to stink, I don't know what the Cubs are going to do. I think the Brewers can win this division.
Yeah. Hey, real quick on the Badgers. Love Nick Osen, one of the hardest working dudes in the industry.
He's a grinder.
I would absolutely, if I sold used cars and Nick Osen walked in the door, I would be licking my lips. You know what I mean? Like,
he is an optimistic soul. He wants to see, which is why I think he is a nice change of pace from when we occasionally talk to Zach. And I don't think Zach is a jerk, but Zach is a bit more skeptical. Nick can buy in and be optimistic about some of these things.
I love it. There's this one thing that, 2 things I stuck out. Video getting put out by the Wisconsin team. They put out the Luke Fickell pre-camp speech. I thought it could not have been worse. Listening to it, I didn't really understand the point. He's not wearing any Wisconsin gear. The players are eyes glazed over. Maybe don't put a film out when your players are at 7 a.m., before the first practice. Yeah, right. It's not going to be good. Second thing, hearing the defense talk about this scheme on the offensive side, Grant, I don't know if anybody's talking about this, but they went around and interviewed all the defensive players. What do you notice about this new scheme? And holy smokes, a lot of smoke and mirrors. If you just ignore all the gimmicks, it's not too hard to figure out. And she kind of gave like the opponent's scouting report and really didn't make me feel good about the scheme at all. They weren't very complimentary. It was more like, yeah, there's a lot of gimmicks, and if you just see through the noise, you can figure it out pretty easy. So I don't know if anybody else caught on that, but there's a lot of individual player interviews. I'll leave it at that, but excited to hear more out of camp.
No, and we will hear more. It's tough because I know people want to talk Badgers and people want to talk college football, and I'm not the biggest college football person. I dabble. When there are big games and big storylines, I'll get into it. I find it very interesting. But, like, we have Jesse once a week throughout the summer, and when there's nothing going on, like, I don't have much more to ask. I don't have much more to say. Now that practice is underway and we're getting interviews with players and coaches and we can actually observe and take things away from these practices, yeah, we're going to ramp up our coverage and we can talk about some of these same things with Jesse on Thursday. And he's not going to give a completely different accounting of the facts, but he's obviously a different mind, a different point of view, a different perspective, which is why it's nice. That's why it's nice to have different guests. They see things differently. They point out different things. So when we come back on the other side of this break, I'll take your calls on whatever. If you want to talk Brewers, Cubs, absolutely. You want to talk Badgers, 100%. But I'll bring you the latest from Packers practice today, too, and the latest on the injury to Marshawn Lloyd. A little bit different than maybe we thought yesterday. So we'll get to that. And remember, Mike Clemens in less than an hour as well.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, it's game 2 of Brewers and Cubs at American Family Field tonight. Milwaukee took the first game of the series last night to move one game in front of Chicago for first in the NL Central. The series has been billed as a huge one, and while Christian Yelich understands it, he also can read a calendar.
We play a lot of big games, a lot of big series. We knew there'd be a lot of energy and kind of just hype around the series, but it's still July. There's, regardless of if we got swept or we swept them or however the series plays out, there's still 2 months of baseball left, and we knew that. And we just kind of knew that, hey, let's go out there and play our game, try to put pressure on them and you never know what can happen.
Yelich and the rest of the Brewers bats going to face a familiar face tonight as Colin Ray goes for the Cubs. Spent the last 2 years in Milwaukee's starting rotation, going 20-10. This year, he's 8-4 with a 4.06 ERA. Did not pitch in any of the earlier games against Milwaukee. As for the Brewers, they're going to roll with Quinn Priester tonight. He's 9-2 with a 3.28 ERA. His worst out of the season came against Chicago back in early May when he gave up 7 runs in a 10-0 loss, but he's been good of late, giving up 2 or fewer runs in 4 of his last 5 starts. First pitch is at 6:40.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
All business owners want the same thing, to make their business succeed. At Rural Mutual, they help that happen. As the 3rd largest writer of commercial business in Wisconsin, they take the time to learn your business so they can properly protect you. Call your local agent today or visit ruralmutual.com.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Packers were on the field earlier today for practice of a training camp. Among the highlights, a 54-yard touchdown from Jordan Love to Matthew Golden. They are off from practice tomorrow. And Wisconsin held practice number 1 of fall camp down in Platteville this morning. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
Oh, Vaughn, deep left center. He's done it again.
I am so glad that Aaron Savali demanded that trade. Swing and a miss from Dansby Swanson, and it's 0-1.
I don't think Boyd had his best stuff. Loved our approach. And, we took our walks. You don't see him walking that many guys in a game ever. What a day for Contreras and Yelich to come up big like they do in big games.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
It's a little bit of audio from last night. I love that radio call. So glad Aaron Savali requested a trade. The Brewers were probably thrilled to have traded him away. I think when he requested a trade and Matt Arnold heard of this request, his first response was, dude, I'm trying. And I've been trying. We want you out of here as bad as you want to get out of here. We need the space in the rotation. We don't even like you in the bullpen. Pat Murphy already doesn't like D.L. Hall and Aaron Ashby. What's he supposed to do with you? Are you kidding me? So that was a funny moment talking about Andrew Vaughn's home run last night. And then Pat Murphy, as I said back at 4 o'clock, I would have bet every dollar in my bank account after the top of the first last night that Mizorowski would bounce back, pitch very well in the second, very well in the third, and probably very well in the fourth. After 40 pitches in the first inning, he was probably only going to go 4 innings, but I thought that the next 3 innings would be great. And then Pat Murphy would go to the podium at the end of the night and say, that was the best start from, man, I love that kid. We learned a lot about him, and that's exactly what happened.
It just goes to show you the kid can pitch, not just throw.
The kid can pitch, not just throw. And then Yelich saying this as well.
I'd love to see it from him, and I told him that's why it was my favorite start of his.
Favorite start of the year. So easy to see coming. I didn't see the Brewers, scoring 8 runs or whatever it was and coming back. That was a nice little side thing, the result of the game. But the script of Mizorowski bouncing back, performing well, and then getting praise really for the first time since Murph, because he's kind of been skeptical. He wants the kid to be humble. I could have seen that coming. The win was a nice side benefit to me being right on the internet and on the radio. That's as important as a Brewers win. A little bit less important, but still, pretty important. It's my whole 9 to 5 thing. 608-321-1670. Your thoughts on the Brewers, the Badgers, and I'll get you the latest from camp, both from the mouth of Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur on the health of Marshawn Lloyd. I'm upset he's hurt again. It's making for very entertaining training camp content, which again, do I want my favorite players to be healthy and injury-free, and do I want my teams to win, or do I want to be right on the internet and right on the radio? It's a balancing act. So the phone lines are wide open for you on anything. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, it's Andy in Sun Prairie.
Hey, Andy, what's going on?
Wanted to talk, not much. Wanted to talk Brewers a bit and get your thoughts on whether we're done at the trade deadline or with that catcher trade, or if we're going to go into the Suarez sweepstakes of both feet. I think they could put a package together. If you deal Durbin and Henderson at the same time, maybe get Suarez, get in that. Question really becomes, if they do that, and this is the thing I don't hear anybody talking about, is whether that messes with their, Island of Misfit Toys, underdogs without a care type vibe.
Sure.
In the clubhouse and all that. whether they could do more harm than good by bringing on someone like Suarez. But I mean, a proven bat in the middle of the lineup is the one thing we seem to be missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the thing that's going to put him over the top, I don't know enough about him personally whether or not he's going to be able to fit what Pat Murphy's got going on there, and that's what I'd like your take on. And you've done a great job as always.
No, all right. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate you listening and calling from up in Sun Prairie. So Rosenthal had a little juice on the Brewers earlier today, and I don't think this is solid reporting as much as it is conjecture. It's in his What I'm Hearing column at The Athletic. The Milwaukee Brewers, who acquired Danny Jansen from the Rays on Monday, are among the teams interested in the Baltimore Orioles' Ryan O'Hearn. While O'Hearn would not be a perfect fit for Milwaukee, the team could find at-bats for him at first base and in left field and at designated hitter. Christian Yelich is the Brewers' primary DH. Andrew Vaughn has filled in well for Rhys Hoskins, who is expected to return from a sprained left thumb mid to late August. Switch hitter Isaac Collins, one of the season's biggest surprises, has emerged as the team's primary left fielder. The Brewers entered Monday 21st in slugging percentage by left-handed hitters and 23rd in home runs. O'Hearn, 32, was batting only .218 with an OPS of .648 since May 27th, but the Brewers, only Yelich and Jackson Chourio have exceeded his total of 12 homers. O'Hearn, a potential free agent target, will be owed about $2.5 million. The Brewers also showed interest in another left-handed hitting first baseman, Josh Naylor, before the Diamondbacks sent him to the Mariners. Naylor at the time was owed only $4 million. I find it funny that that he's including those figures of how much these players are owed. I think it's pointing out that, well, the Brewers might not want to pay the freight, because I think Ken Rosenthal has been a little cagey, which I've enjoyed. It's made for good content, but I'm not saying he's taking a shot at the Brewers there. I'm saying he's including something that he doesn't need to include. Do with that what you will. Read in between the lines or don't. There's a couple of things in here in his I won't even call this reporting. I guess he is reporting that they're interested in O'Hearn, but that's not the first time we've heard that. I think this is more musing on, what the Brewers could look to do based on the stats and based on the situation that they're in. I don't want to take away at bats for Andrew Vaughn right now. Of all the places that the Brewers could fit another player into the lineup or onto the field, I don't know that first base is near the top of the list, let alone at the top. And he's done a good job filling in for Rhys Hoskins in his absence. Man, is anyone rushing to get Rhys Hoskins back? And I am as complimentary and as hopeful on Rhys Hoskins as literally anybody. I love that the Brewers signed him. I still contend it was a good signing. I'm glad they did it. I would do it again. It hasn't worked out. Andrew Vaughn has done more in a month and a half than Rhys Hoskins has done in his entire Brewers career, save for, opening day against the Mets last year when he, cried all over Jeff McNeil. That was funny. That was great. Since then, it's been a whole lot of nothing. I'm not really looking to move off Andrew Vaughn right now or bench him. Not really interested in that. Switch hitter Isaac Collins in the outfield, that's been a spot where many Brewers fans would say, okay, well, maybe you could upgrade there. You could get more power, if there's a legitimate power bat. What I don't want is I don't want to replace Isaac Collins with someone who's not giving you something you don't have. So Stephen Kwan, he was tied to the Brewers earlier today if Cleveland decides they want to sell. I like Stephen Kwan. He's a nice ball player, but I don't know that juice is worth the squeeze because you're not getting something you don't already have. This team has lots of good bat-to-ball skills, lots of speed, lots of defense, lots of contact, good swing decisions for the most part up and down the lineup. Joey Ortiz has good swing decisions. Not that his swing is any good, but I guess last night he did swing at the right pitches. Got 92 right down the pipe, and he popped it into the sky. Okay. But Stephen Kwan, what I'm saying is Stephen Kwan would not give you something you're not already getting. If the Brewers can acquire an outfielder who hits a ton of bombs, okay, sorry, Isaac Collins, but that's something that this team needs. Most teams that win playoff series and advance to World Series are top 5 or certainly top 10 in slugging. The Brewers aren't even close. They need a little bit more of that. But I don't want to replace Isaac Collins with someone who's only marginally better and doesn't provide this lineup something they don't already have. There's a chance, Brewers fans, this is getting talked about in a Brewers group chat that I was in earlier today. Maybe Isaac Collins is just good. Maybe he's just good. He's a rookie. And he's had some really nice stretches, and I've thought, okay, this is a nice run. And by the way, you need players who give you good stretches, who punch above their weight for a month. That's how you navigate a regular season. Is, well, in May, remember that one guy got really hot, and way overperformed what we expected, and that helped us. And then that guy comes back down to earth. But in June and July, you have another guy pop up. Like, that's how baseball works over the span of 162 games. And once upon a time, I thought that was Isaac Collins, but I don't know how many more times I can watch him come up with 2 outs and runners on in a huge spot, and he puts together a great at bat, and he bloops one into left, or he rips one down the line. Like, it just keeps happening. So I'm starting to wonder, it's like, well, maybe I should stop waiting for the bottom to drop out. Maybe we should stop waiting for the other shoe to fall on Isaac Collins and maybe just accept that this is the kind of player he is, which is very good. The Brewers could do better, but if they're going to replace him in the outfield, then they need to do better. Like, they need someone who, again, adds something to the lineup that's not already there. And some of these options, like Steven Kwan, okay, that's a nice player. If you got to give up prospects and pay him a bunch of money, he's a marginal upgrade, but I'm not interested in a marginal upgrade. I want a big stick. I want a guy who can come in and hit home runs. Now, that last caller, was it Andy in Sun Prairie? I'm sorry, Andy, if I got your name wrong. But he was asking specifically about Eugenio Suarez. Passan reported or was interacting with folks on Threads earlier today saying that he would bet money or he would expect that it's the Mariners or the Cubs. And the Cubs continued, failures on offense. All of their guys have gone cold. To me, makes it seem a little bit more likely that maybe they pull the trigger and pay the freight and overpay on Suarez because he's the bat that everybody wants. I would take him on the Brewers. I like Caleb Durbin, but Caleb Durbin again tonight's not in the lineup. Well, he's facing a righty. Yeah, but the righty's Colin Ray. You know what I mean? Like, I know his righty-lefty splits are not great. Would I rather have Caleb Durbin face a righty who doesn't throw gas? Like, he's not going up against prime Randy Johnson, who I think was a righty. Fill in the blank with, whatever great righty you want. Like, would I rather have Caleb Durbin against a very average right-handed pitcher, or would I rather have Anthony Siegler? Like, I don't know. But forget what I want. Forget what I'm telling you. Look at what the Brewers are telling you. They're telling you that Caleb Durbin is not an everyday player. So for those, and I've been in this camp as well, for those who have concerns about how Eugenio Suarez would fit, he'd fit just fine. Look at all of the players who are, platooning at third or finding at bats in this lineup. So if you want to play Suarez 3 days and give a fourth day to Durbin at third, and then Suarez is a bench option for that day, or you DH him, there's plenty of space. I think he fits just fine. And again, to the caller's question of whether he fits this island of misfit toy, well, no, he doesn't. But at some point, the island, what happened to the island of misfit toys, by the way? Let's talk about Rudolph, the film. What happened? Who got involved at the island of misfit toys? Rudolph and Santa. I mean, like, the island of misfit toys is a great story. We never hear about that story. That story never has this very redeeming ending where all these toys find a home, if not for Santa. So the Brewers might need their Santa Claus. They might need their Rudolph. And that could be Eugenio Suarez. Again, bringing something to the lineup they don't already have. A ton of pop and a ton of power. So I wouldn't be so worried about fit and chemistry. There's places in this lineup. Look at the lineup every day. There's a Siegler. There's a Monasterio, right? Now with a backup catcher, maybe you're not so worried about DHing William Contreras, which I absolutely hate. If he's playing, he should be catching. He sucked at hitting. I don't want him only in the game to hit. That's the opposite of set. I don't want that. I'd rather have him be the designated catcher and have someone else hit for him because he's been so bad and he hasn't had any power. Although he had a nice night last night. I mean, not in the first inning when he grounded into the double play, but the other couple of bats, he was fine. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, Tony from Texas.
Hey, Tony.
And I'm going to Wichita. I got the Seven Nation Army song in my head because I'm driving to Wichita.
Are you a lineman for the county?
Well, that movie Tommy Boy with Chris Farley. I'm driving around aimlessly to small towns trying to save the company. I'm gonna hit all your topics here.
Sure.
All right. Where Phil Longo? You know where that guy is right now?
Sam Houston.
He got a head coaching gig. How do you get a head coaching gig? And if you're a Badger fan, you got to know your Badger history. In the late 80s, a guy named Don Morton destroyed the program before Barry rescued it. I don't think Fickle's program is going to go anywhere. And you were exactly right about the better the players, you just know you're going to win. I don't want to be anyone's underdog, to quote Mike McCarthy. Let's dip into the Packers. I am drinking the Matthew Golden Kool-Aid. I think the guy's going to be good. I am jumping in on Malik Willis. You challenged me. Yes, I think Malik Willis is good. And yes, I think he can be as good as Jordan Love.
No, wait. That's not what I did.
I'm
That's not what I challenged you on. I want you to, if you think he's better than Jordan Love, I want you to come out and say it.
I think he's better for Matt LaFleur.
Okay. Well,
How about that?
That's a reasonable take. That's a worthwhile take. That's fine.
I think he'll run the offense. He'll run it well, and they'll score more points.
Interesting.
And win more games.
Because what did we say when Jordan Love took over after Aaron Rodgers?
It's interesting. I think it's factual.
We're finally, what did we say? We're finally going to see Matt LaFleur's offense, right? Post Rodgers into Jordan Love, and now maybe we have run into a similar issue now.
I think with Jordan Love is what we're seeing is a guy that was a little bit better than advertised, and then he wants to explore what he has and kind of get a little bit of Aaron Rodgers in him and start doing that kind of stuff. And then he was hurt and he couldn't do all this stuff.
Sure.
That's my take on that.
That's fair.
And you know what? I'm gonna start treating you like Pat Murphy treats his pitchers. Grant, the show just sucks. You got to get better. You got to get better, Grant. The show is terrible.
I didn't take my walks.
Terrible show.
I didn't take my
Well,
walks.
when you have a terrible show, Grant, I'm just going to try to lift you up.
Well, thank you, Tony. Safest travels to Wichita. He's saving the company. I thought he'd be out chasing AAU recruits. Yeah, Pat Murphy last night. This is what he had to say about Miz, and we could see this coming a million miles away.
We've had this happen to us before, right? When you have that many starting pitchers down.
Wait. This is Quinn Priester singing the praises, which is basically the same thing. He said the same thing about Quinn Priester when he got shelled by the Cubs, and they lost 10-0 or 10-2. Yeah, 10-0 back in early May. Here is Pat Murphy about Mizorowski. Basically the same answer, but this is the correct one.
First inning, we're down 3-0. He feels horrible. His adrenaline. I mean, it's like a fighter getting knocked down in the first round, and he's got to recoup. And that he did. And he started pitching. The pitching coaches did a great job prepping him. You know, you got to use all four. This is how you got to pitch. He said at that point, I'm exhausted, and he still gave us 4, and he wanted to go out for the 5th. So I learned a lot about him, and it just goes to show you the kid can pitch, not just throw.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a quick break, 3 minutes, because I got to go to the bathroom first and foremost. But then we'll have a little extra time on the other side of this break before we get to Mike Clemens. I want to play for you some comments from both Goody and Matt LaFleur, the latest on the injury to Marshawn Lloyd and how that injury came to pass. A lot of people thought, well, he got popped by Nate Hobbs. He got hurt. Sounds like maybe the injury occurred before that, which is a fascinating wrinkle into this whole thing. This makes for very good content out of training camp, although I hope he's not hurt long term. But if he is, I mean, what do you expect me to do? I'm going to make content out of it. We're going to talk about it. Mike Clemens at 5:35, the Wisco Sports Show. Back in 3 minutes. We'll talk Packers.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
How's Marshawn Lloyd doing after yesterday?
Kind of working through it right now, but it's unfortunate, you know.
It was early, but how was he looking?
He was doing great. It's just, you know, you'd like to have him out there. He's a guy that needs that experience, and unfortunately has had to fight through a lot of adversity.
Man, it wasn't the way Brian said it, wasn't necessarily the hit from Hobbs.
It's hard. I mean, you never really know, but it did look like he stuck his foot in the ground and he never put it back in the ground when he had an opportunity to. So that would lead me to believe that it happened prior to the hit. But
How's Marshawn Lloyd doing after yesterday?
Shoddy producing by me there. Although I am the host of the show, not the producer. That's a little exchange. Matt LaFleur with reporters earlier talking about Marshawn Lloyd, and I want to discuss that for a couple minutes here before we get to Mike Clemens at 5:35. Thanks to In on the River bringing you the show. If you've never been to beautiful Trempealeau, Wisconsin, or the surrounding areas, this is why I love working with In on the River, is because you can set up shop there for the weekend. You can bring the boat. It's right across the road, literally across the road from the Mississippi River. And the best part is it's a quiet road. You can walk. It's easy to park. It's not like it's this crazy, main drag. The marina is right to the left, and to the right is the classic Sullivan Supper Club. It's an excellent place to eat. The windows of the place look out over the river and the scenic bluffs on the other side. Right around the corner, the Trempealeau Hotel with live music all the time. I saw my buddy Ryan Howe, Piano Man Howe. He calls the show sometimes. Right across the street. Right up the hill is Perot State Park, Trempealeau Mountain Golf, El Morro Vineyard. And if you want to go down to La Crosse for the afternoon, do something down there, you can do that as well. It can be your little home base for a Western Wisconsin weekend. InOnTheRiverWI.com or call them 608-534-7784. And like their Facebook page as well, because they always post about certain events going on. I know now that Catfish Days is come and gone, right? Things might be a little bit quieter. Good luck getting a room during Catfish Days. Good luck. But things going on around town or promotions they're running or anything like that, you can see it on their Facebook page. And they just repainted the place. It looks fantastic. See those pictures In on the River Trempealeau, I believe, on Facebook. Not too difficult to find. Here's before we get back to the phone calls, here's Brian Gutekunst kind of giving an update earlier this morning on the injury to Marshawn Lloyd. It sounds like a groin. Sounds non-contact. It sounds like it occurred before he took the pop from Nate Hobbs.
Is there anything to worry about with Marshawn Lloyd given the injury history?
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously working through, I think, as he kind of came, around the corner there, he planted to change directions. I think something grabbed on him a little bit. So they're doing the testing now, and I think they'll probably know more today and see where that goes. But feel for him because, he's worked so hard to get his body into elite shape and overcome some of these injuries. And sometimes you're a little bit snake bit. I was talking to the trainers, yesterday and today, and I always, whenever I see players go through this, because from time to time we'll have some guys go through things like this, where they have a bunch of injuries early. And I always think of Mike Flanagan, you know what I mean? And there was probably a lot of times where people kind of thought, okay, well, that's never going to work. And then, but they hung on, and then he was a great player for a long time for us here. So sometimes, that's hard to explain to a player, like just to keep the faith and keep patience, because I'm sure, this has been tough on him, but he's done everything we've asked him to do and more to overcome these things. And I'm sure there'll be a time where he will.
What a throwback, by the way. Mike Flanagan, 1996 draft. Really reaching back. And look, there are plenty of players who were injured early on and they figured it out and they were good. And then there's also plenty of players who were injured early and often, and that's it. That's their career. They're never able to get it going. I don't love the commentary from reporters or pundits, let's say, that Marshawn Lloyd has been, well, snake bit. I think after you get injured so many times, you're just an injury-prone player. You get injured often. I don't know that it's necessarily bad luck. We'll see. If he bounces back from this injury and then has a crystal clear bill of health for 2 years and is an awesome running back, well, yeah, then it was bad luck. Up until this point, I don't feel it's accurate to say it's bad luck. He's just a player that gets hurt a lot, right? If you can't make it through the first padded practice of training camp after missing your entire rookie season due to different injuries to different parts of the body, I have an issue calling that bad luck. I think that's just reality. That's just who he is at this point. Not to say, to Goody's point, that can't change. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
It's Chris in Chippewa.
Hey, Chris, what's going on?
Not too much. So I have a couple Brewers comments to make real quick. So I remember, I think it was a couple weeks back, you were talking about how, like, you hated watching Freddie pitch.
Yeah,
but then you looked at the box score and he went, like, 6 innings, gave up 1 walk, 1 run, and had a great game. I actually think that's a great metaphor for watching the Brewers or listening to the Brewers this year. For me, at least. It's like last night I was watching and I ended up shutting off in the 3rd inning because I was like, I just can't watch this anymore. And then I turned around and crap, they won the game last night.
Yeah, they did.
But they do this so often. It's like they look like absolute garbage through like the first 6 innings of the game, and then they somehow win it at the end. So I think that's a good metaphor for watching the Brewers this season. And then the other thing I have to remind myself as a fan, football is definitely my sport, my game, thing I love to watch. And we're used to seeing people with very high success rates, high percentage completion, good running yards, things like that. But I have to remind myself with baseball, if you fail 70% of the time as a batter, you're probably going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different sport. And I think that's why we pull our hair out watching, Chris. And that's a great call. I appreciate it. I was talking with a friend last night. We were talking about the game. And, I'm just like, I have never been so angry at William Contreras and Christian Yelich after that first inning last night. And then 4 innings later, I was thrilled with them. There's no other sport that does that to you. Right. So it's not just Freddie. You're right. I also think with this Brewers team, a team that gets on base a lot is going to strand more runners on base than teams that don't. So a product of taking a lot of walks, putting the ball in play, hitting a lot of singles is you're going to leave a lot of guys on base because there are a lot of guys on base. So that's going to change the viewing experience, as well. I will say I have not experienced a range of emotions quite like last night's game. And it's not just because of the first inning or the top of the first inning with Mizrowski. It was the bottom of the first when Contreras, that guy could have been a triple play. And it was so obvious. You could feel it coming a mile away. You knew he was going to roll over on a grounder and hit it hard as hell because he's still doing that. He just doesn't elevate the ball. And then Yelich coming up and ground out to third. And it was a great play by Matt Shaw, but it's like, hey, you know how you avoid infielders making great plays? You elevate the ball, you hit it up. And then, to Yelich's credit, the next 2 at-bats he did. And Contreras in his next at-bat smoked one, of course, but that's the crazy pendulum of baseball. You go from being absolutely furious to, oh, okay, my team's winning. Now I'm kind of happy. Or at least that's my experience watching baseball. And I think that's a shared experience of many people. Hating your favorite player and then 20 minutes later being just fine with them. Let's take a quick call and then we'll take a break. Get to Mike Clemens. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, Jeremy, how's it going?
It's going great, Jeremy. How about you?
Good. Hey, loving that game last night. So I just wanted to touch real quick on the Mizrowski start there. I was most impressed by the fact of how we knew he was going to have a game where he was going to get beat up a little bit.
Sure.
And we've seen that previously. But what interested me last night was he got beat up early. Like, the Cubs are a good team. So they nailed him early in the first inning right away. And I'm thinking, oh, here we go. We're going to have to see how he responds to that. And he did. That's, for a kid coming in like he is, I think that's amazing how he just literally kind of turned it around within the next 2-3 innings. I mean, he allowed nothing.
I think he retired the next 10 batters that he faced after that first inning, or it would have been the 3-3-3 in those innings, and then going back to Nico Horner, who struck out 10 the first. So it was the last batter of the first inning, and then and I think 7 strikeouts. Jeremy, I'm just up against it, so I got to run. Thank you for listening in Eau Claire on WAYY. I think, Jeremy, your sentiment is shared by Pat Murphy, Trevor McGill, Christian Yelich, Sal Frelick, who all talked about that after the game. And it was funny, like, Murphy hadn't really been effusive in praise up until this point. He'd been like, yeah, he throws fast, but let's see. He's just kind of Murph. And last night, like, I almost think Murph is happier when players are failing and they find success in that. I think Murphy enjoys that more. It's clear, like, the most glowingly I've heard him talk about Quinn Priester was back in May when he got shelled and then managed to find a way to keep going and eat a couple innings. It's like, okay, that's Murphy's deal. So you could feel that coming a mile away last night for sure. Thank you, Jeremy, for the call. We're going to take a break. Mike Clemens is going to join us next. Thanks to the Bay Motel in Green Bay. We'll get a little sound from practice up in Green Bay and what he found to be or thought to be the biggest talking points and the most important things that we need to cover from the first day of padded practice up in Green Bay. Mike Clemens will join us next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Compete to be your best, take care of each other. We had a long talk and video showing the rules of engagement, things that were good from a year ago and things that weren't great. Bottom line is we need everybody to stay up off their feet. We're not going to the ground today. So that's the expectation that I have for our guys. And I love the competitive spirit out there, but I want them to take care of each other as well.
That's Matt LaFleur yesterday, kind of, I don't know, describing the rules of engagement, what he wants to see the first day of padded practice, beginning earlier today. And there was some contact, let's say, probably some contact that went farther than Matt LaFleur would have liked. Mike Clemens is here, thanks to the Bay Motel in Green Bay, and he was there at practice to see it go down. Do you think Matt LaFleur was pleased or displeased, Mike, with the level of contact as he was kind of outlining there?
Oh, very displeased.
Very.
Displeased. Hey, listen, it's July, it's August, it's football training camps, there's camp fights, it's men in helmets and shoulder pads punching each other, that kind of thing. This is what makes today's story just a little bit more unique. There wasn't a fight per se today.
Yeah.
Or, 8-on-8, slapping each other around. How much is Jordan Love getting paid this year? 20 million? 30 million a year or something like that?
A number that's so big that I couldn't pull it. I thought it was closer to 40, but I don't know.
Zach Tom. See, we have to remember, this isn't the Lombardi era anymore, okay? There are multi-million-dollar athletes out there, and we do not want to break them during training camp. We've spent too much money on a lot of these players, and we don't want them anywhere near an accident if we can help it. And so one of the things that LaFleur is trying to do to prevent those things happening is not only do you not, get into a fight and punch a guy, those kinds of things, you don't even say things that trigger a fight.
Sure.
That's like a new rule, apparently, or one that we found out a little bit more about today. So it's 11-on-11. It's day 2 of shoulder pads. The coach had said this morning, I think we'll probably have a live period or two, too, where you can tackle and take a guy to the ground. Just to, let's get it out. And particularly you second and third stringers, here's your chance to see if you can, make a full tackle in the NFL. And so during 11-on-11, the left tackle, Rasheed Walker, holding down that position now for another year, is up against J.J. Enagbare, number 55, outside linebacker, defensive end. Snap of the ball, and Enagbare, when he hits Walker, it was a loud hit. Smack. This is like 15 yards from me. Big hit. And he's rushing and pushing him back. And I thought LaFleur had said to us over the weekend, when we were talking about engagement and how you're going to go from helmets and shorts to in pads, he says, I'm going to tell the guys in the defensive line too, I don't want a bull rush. Okay. Work on your technique, work on your hand to hand, but don't bull rush the quarterback. Let's work on your spin moves and things like that. Well, this looked to me like a bull rush. All right. So whatever, Walker's now like backing up and trying to protect his guy and keep this defender from getting in past him and into the pocket. And then the whistle blows, and then they're still kind of going at it. And then they break loose, and Enagbare releases, turns around, starts heading back to the defensive huddle. And then Rasheed Walker says something about 3 or 4 sentences, and I couldn't pick it up. And Enagbare looked back at him like, whoa. And an assistant coach comes running up to 63 to Walker, the left tackle, and says, go to the sidelines. You're out. And they start pulling another guy in. Now LaFleur, who's back there with Adam Stenovich, and they're going through the menus and they're calling plays. You're like, why did I just lose my left tackle? What happened? So he tells them the words that Rasheed used to Enagbare, the defensive player. And then LaFleur comes right in front of all the media right there, not showing off. He's just totally focused on his practice and his guys. And he comes over to 63, whose back is still turned because he's kind of sauntering off to the sideline. And he says, Sheed, hey, Sheed. And he turns around and he goes, take a lap. Ernie, go with him. Take a lap. And so he's like, oh, God. So, this big 330-pound lineman starts jogging down the sideline because he's going to go north of the field and take a big lap around the big practice field down there at the other end.
Jeez.
The other linemen now, they look at this and they look at each other. Okay, they all put on their helmets, they put on their chin straps, and they go follow him. So that to the point where you got 6 guys following him, including number 8, Josh Jacobs, the running back. And they all take a lap. The linemen that were not currently on the field for the next wave of plays in the scrimmage, they all follow them all around. It takes about a minute for them to go all the way down to the end, turn, just like in high school, come back and take a lap. We get into the locker room, and there's Walker and a big huddle of reporters around him say, well, what did you say to him that triggered that? He goes, I forgot now. I forgot what I said.
But did he say something? It was something along the lines of like, it's camp. People are hitting each other. Things like that happen, which is true. But I think that's the exact type of thing that Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff are very specifically looking to avoid, right?
Yeah, it's training camp. It's hot again. It's been hot every day. By the way, I asked Josh Jacobs, I go, what's training camp like in Nevada? He says 105.
Yeah.
And I said, well, outdoors, or do the Raiders have a roof? No, we were outside. Cardinals do. No, we were outside. And he said we take breaks during practice out with Raiders, and you get in the cold tub. They got the cold tubs right there on the side.
Sure.
So you take a minute, you jump in for 3 minutes, get the body temperature down, then turn around. That's got to be bad for your body, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems a little like you wouldn't want to be going back and forth between two extremes.
Yeah. So, big picture, this brand new $21 million new locker room and facility and everything, and all these guys got their nice little pictures over their cells. And I thought, there's 90 players in here. They'll be down to 63, including practice squad. Like, any of us. My God, if we work in a radio station, there's 12 people. There's 1 or 2 of them we're not going to like, right?
Yep.
And not going to get along with. We don't see eye to eye. So I asked Jordan Love, as a leader, do you seek these things out? If you see, you don't want a small thing to start turning into a big deal if 2 guys aren't getting along. And here's what Jordan Love told me.
No, I mean, it's one of those things where, this is football. We got a big team. It's not like basketball or any of these other sports. We got a lot of guys on the team right now, obviously during training camp, and that cuts down to that 53-man roster. But it's one of those things. There's a lot of different personalities. So I think it just comes back to everybody having that mindset of team first. We're all in this together. We're fighting for the same common goal to go out there, win as many games as possible, take the NFC North and win a Super Bowl. So I think if everybody has that right mindset, you kind of let some of that other stuff go, and you don't have as many divisions and guys bickering. But the competitiveness, that stuff always happens. It's football. These guys are battling every day. O-line, D-line, they're banging every day. So there's going to be some chippiness on the field, but at the end of the day, you got to be able to dap each other up and find ways to compete through the whistle and understand that we're a team at the end of the day.
I'm very, very quarterback type perspective of, hey, yeah, we don't all love each other, but it's going to be way worse if we dwell on it. So let's just get along and try to win some football games. Because Mike, I have a feeling that even guys in the locker room who aren't big fans of each other has a tendency of being okay when you're winning games and succeeding at a high level, right? That typically seems to cure these issues in locker rooms.
Yeah, and then leadership like Tucker Kraft,
Mm-hmm.
a straight shooter. And we're talking about, so, not only do you not have, rules of engagement, not hitting your teammates, not punching each other with your face mask, helmet, and shoulder pads on, but it's, it's things that you say. And he says, yeah, T-sub, T-S-U-B. T-S-U-B. What does that mean, Tucker?
Throwing somebody under the bus. Yeah, there's a certain level of maturity to it. If you get beat on a play, some people get maybe a little sensitive about it, holding on to jerseys for an extra couple seconds. We're all, extremely competitive individuals. We're here playing professional football. At a certain point, we just have to realize that we're going to get tired of beating up on each other. We gotta get more prepared to play other teams, and the best way to do that is just to keep each other safe, keep each other up.
Throwing somebody under the bus. You tell me what you exactly took away from that comment. I heard is, hey man, if you get your ass beat on a play, don't make it worse by immediately getting mad at someone and charging up the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Move on to the next play.
Yeah.
That's what the meeting room is for. We're not going to talk about this kind of stuff out here in the field. Get ready for the next play. Reload. Get ready.
I like that.
So yesterday, Elton Jenkins was back in action. He was working at snapping today. He's injured his back while weightlifting during OTAs in May. And, there's no contract issue now going on for right now. He's just focused on trying to settle in and be Jordan Love's center and snapping the football and running the offensive line. But I've talked about this since the post-game show we did in the playoff loss in Philadelphia to the Eagles, when I said, Elton Jenkins at left guard, his right arm was so dead he couldn't even lift it to take his jersey off. He'd had was ruled as a stinger, and he had to have a couple of his teammates help pull his jersey off. It was that dead. And then so yesterday I said, do you think he could have played in the Super Bowl if he'd gotten that far? Because it probably would have taken 2 weeks, so he probably would have missed the next week. And I said, that was a cheap shot, man. Nolan Smith, that linebacker, here you were just in space, moving out to the right. The ball was downfield. The play was out of the way. And this guy sees you walking around, and he just takes a shot, lays his helmet into your shoulder, and takes you out of the game. I said, there's a half dozen hits like that where I just think Vic Fangio told his defenders, just hit somebody. They're not going to call it.
Yeah.
If you see someone not paying attention, hit them. It's the old, keeping your head on a swivel. And so I thought about this, didn't you get the feeling at the end of the day when you lost a playoff game to the 49ers or you lost to the Eagles in Philadelphia that the Packers just didn't match up physically in terms of a hard-hitting football team? And I asked Brian Gutekunst that today.
I think, quite frankly, over the last couple of years, I felt really good about our physicality and our toughness and our ability to play that kind of game. I think there probably were times in the past where I was kind of think we need to be a little more physical of a football team, but not over the last couple of years.
So I think the Niners have been more physical than them, and the Eagles as well. I know he's not going to call his team soft and say that they need to be tougher, but Mike, wouldn't you look at this offseason? They paid a bunch of money to Aaron Banks, who's the size of a house, and Nate Hobbs, who's a hitter to the point where he's hitting his own guys in practice. It's clear that just look at their actions. Don't listen to Brian Gutekunst's comments. That's how he felt about this roster.
Well, the Packers tend to get guys that are smart and cooperate and figure out ways to execute, but not thugs.
Yeah.
And sometimes these teams are better at having an occasional thug. I can think of a couple of guys in the secondary of the 49ers. I can definitely think of 2 or 3 dudes that are on the defensive front line for Vic Fangio in Philadelphia. And, sometimes it helps to have a couple of those guys along, even if you have to spend extra time watching what they're doing. So as you covered the Marshawn Lloyd situation, it's a guy that they really were looking forward to getting a look at finally with pads on. And it turns out that LaFleur said after watching the tape a second time, it wasn't necessarily the hit from Nate Hobbs running off a left tackle yesterday on just the third play of the damn practice, that he had made a cut, but the leg didn't quite follow. So now he's got a groin injury and he's standing there on the sideline. So, once again, we still don't know what Marshawn Lloyd, the running back out of USC, third-round pick, how he's going to make the team, how he looks, if in fact he can be backing up Josh Jacobs this year.
And Josh Jacobs said today that he didn't think it would be serious, or he didn't think he missed a ton of time. Not a doctor and not a coach, but I guess that's something. I guess that's a little optimism.
Yeah, and it's just when guys get injured, then they we don't talk to them. And unless the player wants to, or it's a long thing like a Christian Watson kind of a situation. But for the most part, when a guy's on the injury list or injured, he's off the record for the media until he's back active on the field.
I get that. Well, Mike, I appreciate it. I know we'll check in certainly at least on Bill's show at least one or two more times this week, but it's great to have football back. Thank you for joining us and bringing us the latest.
Thank you, Grant. Appreciate it, pal.
Yeah, of course. Mike Clemens, the Bay Motel in Green Bay, quiet, cozy, comfortable, just a couple of steps. I was going to say a couple miles, but not a mile. It's less than a mile from Lambeau Field. And the Bay Family Restaurant, home cooking 7 days a week. And I know that if you're in town for a Packer game, it's a great idea. Let's go out to a restaurant. Let's go out to a bar. Until you get there and the line is out the door and the wait is over an hour and you've been drinking beers and you got to go to the bathroom. Sometimes it's nice to have that home base in the Bay Family Restaurant. Maybe not for every meal when you're in Green Bay, but certainly, maybe for breakfast or at the end of a weekend, right? They got you covered. So on South Military Avenue, baymotelgreenbay.com, or give them a call. The number being 920-494-3441, sponsoring Mike Clemens' appearances on our network, and it's appreciated. Let's take our final break of the show. We'll come back. Couple minutes left. Maybe some final Brewers thoughts. I'll give you the lineup for tonight's game. Some of you will hate it, and that's fine. That's what lineups are for. We'll conclude the show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
And the other thing I didn't like, Matt, is when they got down 4-3 after 3, it didn't feel it felt really done.
Yeah, the whole vibe changed.
Yeah, it just didn't feel like
trying to think of an expression, but I didn't want to botch it.
And that's your point about being 23-21 lately. That's what it feels like. A 23-21 team, that feels like a loss. The April and May Cubs, you're down 4-3 in the third, and you talk about this, and air quotes for the audio people, this vaunted Cubs
and who
offense.
says that you're making fun of now?
No,
I used that a couple times now.
Because everybody just keeps talking about, we don't need
everybody.
Suarez.
Okay.
We don't need Suarez. We don't need another bat. Pitching. This offense isn't good enough right now. They got to get going.
Let's Locked On Cubs one more time. And I cut that soundbite. I was listening to that last night. I was listening to Sam's live stream. Sam Olber, who's on the show yesterday. If you ever want to keep an eye on the enemy, and if the Brewers and the Cubs are going to be neck and neck towards the end of the season, I like to keep up to date with what's going on. I would recommend their podcast. But I cut that last night because I think it speaks to the state of the Cubs. I feel very good about the Brewers' chances of winning this division, even though I think up until this point in the season, the Cubs have been more talented. The offense has been more potent. But over the last month or so, like, is this the Kyle Tucker they're going to get the rest of the year? Now, I almost feel bad putting this out into the ether because watch tonight, Seiya Suzuki will have a home run and a double, and Kyle Tucker will have, 3 hits, and I'll have egg on my face. But up until this point, over the last month and a half, like, Seiya Suzuki has come back down to earth and looked more like the Seiya from last year than the Seiya from, the first month or 2 of this season. Same, Ian Happ's mostly been poor throughout this season, but Seiya's fallen off. Michael Busch has fallen off. Kyle Tucker has been, he's been worse than Andrew Vaughn over the last month or 2, which is a tweet that made me laugh last night. Sam tweeted. He tweeted such a good tweet. I almost sent this to Austin, then I looked down and Austin sent it to me. He said, yeah, if the Cubs have any chance in the Central, we're going to need Kyle Tucker to be better than Andrew Vaughn at some point. That's been the Cubs recently. The Brewers, I think, can maintain and do a lot of these things that they've been doing, especially if they add an arm and a bat at the deadline. We'll see. I think they improved backup catcher, and hopefully part of that trade is they want to give William Contreras some days off. If not, they're stupid and reckless. And I think they've been stupid and reckless with William Contreras and his finger up until this point because they haven't had it fixed or addressed. They just let it go this offseason, I guess. But if they get another reliever that you can trust and a bat that hits some home runs, I feel great about the Brewers maintaining the way that they're playing. They're not going to win 11 in a row, over and over again. The Cubs, it's like, well, if this is the Michael Busch that they're getting and the Seiya Suzuki and the Kyle Tucker, well, that's a 500 team or a slightly better than 500 team. And I'm pretty darn confident that the Brewers can play better than that. So this is more about the Cubs at this moment in time. Hopefully they don't bust out and score 15 runs tonight. Make us all seem really stupid. Colin Ray versus Quinn Priester. What a world. Enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully it starts a little bit better than last night and finishes the same. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. They'll have a day game tomorrow, too. So tomorrow night we get to react to 2 Brewers-Cubs games. I always love those shows. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the game tomorrow. We will talk tomorrow at 4. Thank you for listening as always.